Hi everyone, this is John Dickinson from MotionWorks, back with another tutorial for Digital Juice. In this tutorial we're going to take a look at how I created this animation using Digital Juice's Animated Canvases 2, After Effects and Cinema 4D. So let's just get straight into it. We'll go across to the juicer and I'll show you where you can find this movie. Now if you have Animated Canvases 2, you'll click on Animations, come down to Animated Canvases, and you can see I have Animated Canvases Collection 2 installed. Now the movie that I chose was this one here, Mercury Sunrise. And this is an HD version. You also have the SD versions down the bottom. Although my final output was going to be SD, I chose the HD version because it gave me more flexibility for positioning this as my background in After Effects. And of course, once you've chosen your background, just drag it across to the settings, click on settings, and you can choose your settings here. Okay, now I've already imported this into After Effects, so let's go across to After Effects. And here we have it here. Now I've dropped this into a composition. The composition is 872 by 486, so that's NTSC widescreen. I've just changed the frame rate to 30 frames a second. What do we got here? We've got the Mercury Sunrise HD movie, we've got a camera, and I've also got this Animated Canvases logo. Let's take a look at what the camera's doing. I've set a couple of keyframes for the camera for position, and it's just animating in Z. So the camera is basically doing a pullback in Z. Let's take a look at the custom view. See how the camera is pulling back here? Just two simple keyframes. And notice how the Animated Canvases logo is behind the camera at the start, and as the camera pulls back it reveals the logo. So the logo itself isn't actually moving. And let's take a look at the curves for the camera. You can see when I select position we have this nice ease, and you can create that just by clicking on the keyframe and just adjusting the handles. These are the influence handles. So I just pull that out and ease that out. You could also come up to the keyframe velocity and you could type this in manually. So outgoing velocity, make that 50%, and select the bottom one. Keyframe velocity, incoming velocity is 50%, so I've already done that. So now we get this nice ease out and an ease at the end. Okay, so there's my logo, and you can see how the logo, it's white because I've given it a fill. Actually was black, and it really popped out in black, but I wanted the logo white. But you can see how it's very difficult to read here where the sun is. And of course I could have added a drop shadow to this or added any number of effects to help it stand out, but much better to make this logo 3D and really give it some punch. And by taking it into Cinema 4D, we can use this Animated Canvases as an environment and reflect that in the text. And that's exactly what I did. So I set the animation up in After Effects, and now I can export this animation across to Cinema 4D. Now this wasn't possible in the past, but thanks to the most recent plugin from Maxon, we're not only able to export Cinema 4D data to After Effects, we can go back the other way. So I can export this data into Cinema 4D. And to do that, we come up to the File menu and choose Export, Cinema 4D Exporter. And just give that a name. I'm going to name this Animated Canvases 01. Now come across to Cinema 4D, and from the File menu here, choose Merge Objects. Here's my file, Animated Canvases. Click Open. And we've got a few things going on. Got some materials that have been created down here in the materials panel, and we've got a null object here named Out of Sight, which is the same name as the composition in After Effects. To roll that down, you can see Camera 1. Camera 1 has a target. We've got the Mercury Sunrise HD movie. Now this is a Cinema 4D plain object, but it has the texture applied. And there's also this Anim Canvases logo, which is the logo from After Effects, but it isn't actually the logo, it's a placeholder. So let's just take a look through the camera by clicking on this button here. And you can see there's the placeholder there. If I just drag my time indicator, you can see the animation looks exactly as it did in After Effects. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace this animated canvas's logo placeholder with a 3D logo. So first thing we want to do is go to the File menu and choose Merge Objects. I've saved my logo here. This is Anim Canvas's logo 01. This is just the logo that I was supplied by Digital Juice, and I've saved it as an Illustrator 8 file. And in the Adobe Illustrator import dialog box, I have a scale of 1 and I've chosen to connect splines. Okay, you can see it back down behind here. Now we want to put this in exactly the same position as this placeholder. Before we do that, we want to combine some of these paths. Let's just turn off this placeholder for a moment. There's the paths back there. Now if I select path 1, that's the C, and I'll just shift click down to path 10. That selected all of the letters for canvases. Right click on any of those and choose Connect Objects and Delete. I'm going to name this Canvases. Now select the other paths because they're the ones that make up Animated, and Connect Objects and Delete. Animated. Now these aren't going to animate separately, but what I want to do is put slightly different bevel settings on the word animated to canvases, because animated is much smaller and it doesn't look as effective if the bevels are too big. Okay, so there's animated canvases. What I want to do now to get this in the same position as this layer here is drag it to become a child, just like that, and then zero out the coordinates for the child. And that puts it right in the right position. Perfect. Now I can just drag that up above the placeholder, and I can delete the placeholder. Okay. So there's our splines. Now it's slightly to the left. I might just grab that and just move this to the right. Looking good. Okay, so next we want to add some extrude objects. So I'm going to select Animated and hold down the Option key or Alt on Windows and choose Extrude. And that makes that a parent of Animated. Same for Canvases. And we'll name this one Animated. And this one Canvases. Okay, so a little bit of work to do on these now. Now I've already created some materials for these. We'll look at the materials in a sec. But first of all, what I want to do is just have a look at the fillets. So I'm going to select Animated and come down to Caps. For start, I'm going to choose Fillet Cap. And I want to have a few steps for this. I'm going to choose 5. But I want the radius to be fairly small, say 2. Just preview that. Pressing Command R on the Mac, that's Control R on Windows. So that looks pretty good. What you've got to be careful of when you're adding fillets to your text is that, especially in these areas here, that the fillets don't overlap, and then you get the geometry crossing over itself. But for canvases, I can use slightly larger fillet. So let's go to Canvases, choose Fillet Cap, and steps is going to be 5. Let's give us a nice smooth fillet. And I'm going to make the radius 2.5. Okay, so it's slightly larger, looking good. Okay, so let's take a look at some materials now. Now I've already created some materials and I'm going to import them into this project by choosing File, Merge Objects. Have them here in the Work Files folder, Materials, just to save some time. And these are my materials down here. I've got rounding, sides, and cap. I've just given them some names. They're basically identical materials. I've just changed the reflectivity slightly, and I've also changed the color of them. So first of all, you've got this white one here, and you can see color, luminance, and reflection and specular is checked. Color is white. A little bit of luminance just to make the text pop a little bit, and a nice sharp specular. For the sides, you can see specular is exactly the same. Color is yellow, and luminance is slightly lower. And for the rounding, luminance once again is slightly higher. And keep in mind for the reflection, I've also added a Fresnel by clicking on Texture and choosing Fresnel. And that gives a much more realistic reflection. Okay, so let's put this on the text. I'll do canvases first. Drop on the yellow. Looking good. Next I'm going to put on the cap. And of course it's going to cover everything. So what I want to do with the tag selected is down here in the selection box, type in C1. Now we have white on the cap. And next is the rounding. And for rounding, I want to type in R1, capital R1. Looking good. I made the rounding slightly different just to help the text pop out a little bit. And take a look how the Digital Juice animated canvas is being reflected beautifully in the sides of this text. So nice. Okay, now to apply the materials to the animated, I'm just going to shift click to select the tags, hold down Control and drag, and that duplicates them. Exactly the same settings. Looking really nice. Really important to have that material on the bevel because that helps the text really stand out against this bright background where the sun is. And speaking of the background, I'm just going to select that material because by default you can see the specular is turned on and we don't want that, so I'm just going to turn specular off. Much better. Looking really good. Remember, all of the animation came from After Effects. You might be thinking to yourself, well, I could have done all this animation in Cinema 4D. But think of this as a situation where you've done an animation, you've set it up in After Effects. Well, you don't want to come back into Cinema 4D and start recreating everything from scratch. Much nicer to be able to export the project across to Cinema, just switch out the logo, and once that's done, you can just render out from here, or you could render out with an object buffer and do multiple passes, bring that back into After Effects and continue to work on it. Okay, so to finish this off, we're going to add a few keyframes for the logo, just to make it look a bit more dynamic as it moves in. So probably at about 70 frames, I'm going to select Anim Canvas's logo 01. I'll just name this logo. Come down to coordinates, and I want to set keyframes for the heading and the pitch. So I'm going to hold down the Control key and create a keyframe by clicking on this little round black circle here at 0, and I'm going to come back to the beginning. Not quite to the beginning because I want to be able to see what I'm doing. If I come right back to the beginning, I can't see the logo. Probably to about here. And I'm going to change the heading just to rotate this slightly and change the pitch, something like that. And make this 28, make it an even number. You can see these circles have gone yellow now, so I'm going to Control click to create another keyframe, then take that keyframe and drag it back to 0. That's nice, isn't it? Much more dynamic. Really nice. And remember, you could take any of the Digital Juice animated canvases, bring them into Cinema 4D, and just replace the texture. Here on the color channel, you can see here's the texture here. Click this button with the 3 dots, choose a different canvas, and come up with a completely different look. Okay, so I hope that's given you some ideas of how you can use Digital Juice with After Effects and Cinema 4D to create some really stylish looks really easily. For now, this is John Dickinson from MotionWorks for Digital Juice. Have fun, be creative, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.